You built up Madison, sold this business for 8 figures. Then what? Today's guest on the Powerhouse Diaries is, well, what is she not? She's an investor, she's an entrepreneur, she's a mentor, she's a coach, she's all the things. And more than anything else, she is an incredible inspiration for so many female founders across the world.
You think it's just like the end of the world, or this is the most, and you're in crisis, all this kind of stuff. Whatever's happening today, will it matter in 10 years' time? And if you have that perspective, you go, actually, this thing that's happening right now, does it actually matter really in the long term, right?
Yeah. She started a business basically by accident, based on what she did and what she saw and didn't like.
I was working in this big global corporate, worldwide recruitment company. It wasn't a great employment situation. I worked my way up into national sales director, and I was talking to my counterpart in Australia about it. It was just this moment where he said, you know that the revenue of the whole of the country for New Zealand is the rounding up of the decimal point, the whole global revenues. And I was like, what? Madison was born out of that frustration, really.
I am so excited to share all her secrets, all her stories in today's episode. Welcome, Marisa Fong.
Dear diary, holy crap. Is this actually happening? Sitting on this random cruise ship at the all-you-can-eat buffet with my parents, it suddenly just hit me. Have I really just sold this business for an 8-figure sum? What am I going to do now?
Welcome to the Powerhouse Diaries, the podcast for and by brave, bold, and badass business owners. If you're an entrepreneur who has outgrown those cookie-cutter business strategies and #girlboss cliches, you're in the right place. Because let's face it, entrepreneurship is at least equal parts messy buns and runny mascara as it is the highlight reel we see online. So let's get real about what it really takes to build and run a quote-unquote successful business, blood, sweat, and margaritas included. Welcome so much, Marisa. I'm so excited to have you here because the more I get to know you, the more I am just blown away by your story and all that you are and do. So, like, I'd love to just dive right in and we'll get to that starting point, to like, what happened? Was there like a pivotal moment for you where you're like, I need to start doing my own thing?
Yes, there was. And I shared this somewhere else where I said, often people think that people start businesses because they're pulled towards an idea, but actually sometimes you're pushed into it by an event or something that happens, right? And so I was in a very unpleasant employment environment with a company, big corporate, global recruitment company. I was second to IC in terms of doing all the national sales, and was very successful at that, but the delivery of the service was often wanting. And so I'm selling this thing, I'm being very successful at bringing clients in, and yet we're losing them because they're churning, because we're not doing what we say we're going to do.
And it's your name on
the line. And it's my name. And I didn't have a very great relationship with the manager I had at the time, country manager. She was leading the company. And I remember saying this to my counterpart in Australia, saying, don't they see how bad our staff attrition numbers are and churn rate and all this kind of thing? And he said, I'll just put something in perspective for you. And I went, what's that? And here's me out there selling my little butt off. He said, well, you do know that the whole of the New Zealand revenue for the company is the rounding up of the decimal point for the global revenues.
Oh, stab me in the heart.
And it just all pennies dropped. And I thought, it doesn't matter how hard I work for this company, it doesn't matter what situations I try, they're never going to care. They're never going to care. And that was the first kind of really thing going, I've got to get out of here. This is just, nothing I do will be appreciated by anyone.
Crazy. Yep. That's crazy. And then how did you find, where did you find the courage and also the know-how? I mean, in my entrepreneurial journey, have never been slowed down by the need to actually know what I'm doing. I just kind of go and jump and build the parachute on the way down.
Yep.
But I can imagine coming from that scenario, jumping into entrepreneurship is quite a leap. And how did you do that?
I was lucky that I had the example of my parents who, when you're a new migrant into a new country, and you don't have access to education, and you don't have the skill sets to you can't be a doctor or an accountant. You don't have the funding, you don't have the financing. So then you just do what you can do, right?
Yeah.
So you've got to survive on your kind of smarts. And so they were just really clever and knew how to open up businesses. So my father was a cook. Then he opened up his first restaurant. Mum then got involved in the business as well. And so they were really a great ideal pair, because she was great front of house, customer service, everything. She just knew everybody's name. She was amazing. And then my dad, who was really good at kind of just making sure that the quality of the food, the systems and processes were in the business. So they were a great example of entrepreneurship at that kind of level, but also how smart they were, because opening restaurants is not going to lead you to great prosperity, but then leveraging wealth and leveraging debt to then build a very successful property portfolio.
That's amazing.
So they've done very, very well, as kind of a new migrants into a country with no support, anything, building, they're very financially independent, very prosperous, and build a great life. So they were a great example. And I remember my dad must have been filling in a form for something, and he was trying to work out how to spell the word entrepreneur. So he asked me to help him look it up. And I was like, what is entrepreneur? And I was probably 12 or something. And I remember thinking, what is this word? And
I love that.
So we went to look what it was and what the definition of it was. And then my dad said, having your own business means you can make the decisions that you want it to make, and have to words to this effect, right, that you are in control of your life and your destiny. And then so when this other event happened, I thought, oh no, I've got to go and do this thing, because I can then help write the rules of the business and how I want to be in this business, and do everything that's the opposite of this awful experience I was having.
Exactly.
So there you go.
Oh, and how beautiful that moment when you were 12 years old with your father popped up, and you're like, that made that imprint. And at the moment, you'd have no idea. It was just a word you're looking up.
Yeah.
And then, down the line, it's like, this is what I've got to do.
Yeah, exactly. I always remembered that. It was really, really interesting that it would come up again. Yeah. Amazing.
And I love that you come from, an entrepreneurial family, and also your mother and father both working in the business. I'm skipping a bit ahead, but now you are also working together with your husband in a lot of your businesses.
Yeah, well, Simon is what I call my biggest cheerleader. Right? Like, I don't think you can do anything aspirational and big if you're not with the right person that's really supportive. I think it's really difficult, particularly if you're wanting to have a family or you have children or whatever. People have to take a kind of toing and froing. Sometimes someone has to take the lead, the other has to take the lead, because if you're both kind of romping ahead, then there's things that fall through the cracks. And so we work together. He's really kind of the person that I'll bounce ideas off. He's sort of the person that helps me with support, really. And he has worked in a couple of businesses with me, but he tends to prefer to take a back seat.
Yeah. It's funny, because I've done that in the past, and it does definitely come with its challenges. But it's also really beautiful if you can really balance each other out.
Yeah.
And find a way. How has working together or being each other's cheerleader, because I'm sure he'd say the same about you, how has that impacted the growth and the potential of the businesses, and how have the businesses impacted the relationship?
Yeah, I think we're quite clear that our partnership is a personal one, and we're very clear about our projects, my projects. A lot of my projects are ideas I randomly come up with, and then so sometimes it's better that I will pursue something, but so he's got a project that potentially we're working on, which is a property development thing, and so we work together on that. But I'm really mindful that I have to keep checking in, because I'm really bad at just boldly going, right? And then forgetting about the people around me that actually are involved in it as well, because I'm such a action person, decision person, that I have to take a beat and then just consult
Yeah.
with some other people that are actually involved in the project too, right? And so I'm like, oh yes, no, stop, hold on, don't just run off and do this, just check in. And so that's something that from a relationship perspective, I've had to really learn about not just charging ahead on my own, because that's what I think we should all be doing. Yes. And so off I go, and
with the best intentions.
Best intentions, not because I don't want things to be successful or not, but I'm just such a sort of let's do it, and I'm so sort of fast paced that just taking that moment, and what I've learned is actually taking a moment and actually just really being a little bit more thoughtful actually can save a lot of mistakes. So it's been actually positive, but sometimes when I haven't done it, it's had its blowback. So you're like, oh yes, that's right, I should have checked in about about that. Oopsie. Yeah. And I've done that, even with my business partner in the recruitment business. Sometimes I'd charge off and do something, and then it was like, oops, I forgot to mention that I was doing that. Better just go back.
It might be a little less forgiving than your assignment.
Yeah. So I might just oops. So so those are sort of the lessons that you learn, that your style and what you do, sometimes you just have to take a beat and go, actually, is this bringing everyone on the journey too, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's it, right? It's people sharing the vision, because I think if you're a visionary like you are, you see 10, 20, 30 steps ahead, and not everyone might have that, 2020 vision.
Exactly. And no, sometimes it may not be the right one, right? Sometimes you go in this direction and you haven't talked to anybody else, but they bring a different perspective, and then suddenly you're like, oops, we might course correct.
Yeah.
So I think
it's important to have discernment, because what I see a lot within my clients, and I think especially within younger female founders, and I see this in my personal life as well with friends, like the desire to get everyone's buy-in, because we're feeling maybe insecure or not so sure, or having imposter syndrome, so we're trying to get everyone's buy-in. But one of the most powerful quotes around that I keep reminding myself of is, stop asking blind people to proofread your vision. Yeah,
that's a good one.
So it's like, get that support, get that input from the right people.
Exactly.
But that desire to get everyone's input and blessing, you don't get to where you are by everyone always cheering you on, I imagine.
No, not always. And I think, I've got crazy businesses that people are like, why are you doing that? And sometimes I ask myself, I don't know, really. I just thought it'd be interesting or fun or something, or I'd learn something, or I wanted to diversify. And then there was an opportunity. But what I've come to also learn is that opportunities are like buses, they just keep coming along.
Yes.
You don't have to hop on every single one, So, and so work out, this is important for me, is work out what are the things that really matter to me, like what's my value set and my why. And if it doesn't meet my why and my value set, then so why are you doing it really?
That's such an important one. I was speaking to a good friend of mine. I think opportunities, like you say, are like buses, but the same is true for inspiration and creativity and abundance. Like I always kind of imagine that there's all these invisible streams just kind of always around us, like in Finding Nemo, where there's like a rapid in the ocean and all the fish just kind of like, and they migrate. And so it's always around. It's just about kind of aligning yourself with those opportunities and being able to tap into that frequency like a radio station. And not only did that give me so much more peace of mind, because like you, I'm a very shiny object girl, and I'm very easily enthused, especially with business. And when I see passionate people, I'm like, yes, okay, let's do this.
Yes.
And realizing that, this stream is always there, and also the things you believe in and the things that do align with your core values, with the life you want to create. Instead of having a business that dictates who you are, how you feel, what you experience, move from a space of who do I want to be, what do I want to experience, how do I want to feel, and how can I have my business be a vehicle for that.
Yes,
has been an absolute game changer. And when you focus, you realize, or one of the big things I realize is like the things that matter also deserve that level of kind of focus and dedication.
Yes. Otherwise you're spread too thin, and I've just been dropping things. At the beginning of this year I did a bit of a scan of what things I'm involved in, and thought, oh no, this is, I'm spread too thin, I'm doing things that are not really, I'm not providing probably my best work, or potentially if I spread myself any further. So I need to apply some focus to just two things, and then let the others go. And so I'm working on that at the moment. And so that's been quite interesting. But yeah, and interestingly though, I've got, I was having a conversation. I went to this beautiful store, and I was talking to the store owner, and I know her, as an acquaintance, so to speak. And I was just talking to her about her business because, I'm interested and all that kind of thing. And then she mentioned that she had this new thing she was doing, which was a new tech, which would be related to retail, and everybody needs it. And I went, wow. And then we started talking about it, and then she said, I've been looking for somebody to, and so now I'm like, I might be involved. Yes. So, and it's just one of those things she said, because I've been thinking about bringing somebody in to work with. It doesn't need a lot of money or anything like that. It's just more about somebody who knows how these things work. And you started talking to me, and I'd done some angel investing in the tech space, and I said, and she said, it's like, so, it's just like you say, those kind of strings in the universe and synchronicity and everything just kind of lines up, right?
It's crazy. And I think also trusting that and going with that has been one of my, I think, most powerful business strategies and life strategies. And I think that's, it's a big part of what we're about in the Powerhouse Alliance. So the bigger brand, it's all about, helping female founders realize that the answer is not the next guru or that template or that. The answer is actually going within, feeling what's true for you, creating your version of success.
Exactly.
And that's a big thing for you as well. And trusting that, and trusting the little breadcrumbs that you find along the way.
Yeah. And, I think that, people talk about luck and all this kind of thing. I think luck is just really that kind of being open and being really interested. And then you can sift, you can filter. Because if you're open and you're interested, me just asking these questions of this business owner, because she was, I was interested in her business. I'd seen how successful it was. I was talking to her about it. I said how well she'd done. Who was her business advisor? Did she have one? And she was like, no, I've just been learning, sort of making mistakes along the way, probably the hard way. And so we were talking about that. And then I was talking about what I do, and, with my business advisory for women. And so she said, I needed you, and
where were you all my life?
So when you have these questions and you're open and you're asking and you're interested in people, and then things come up because you're just showing genuine interest and then they come up. It doesn't mean you have to leap on every single thing, but at least you can have options, right?
Well, it's the same. You're talking about opportunities are like buses. You're not going to catch the bus if you're not near the bus stop.
Exactly, right.
So you do need to put yourself in the line of opportunity and be open and be curious. Exactly. Otherwise, you're going to sit on your couch. Chances of you, catching the bus, slim to none.
Exactly.
But I'd love to circle back really briefly, because you said you've done some crazy businesses. What is the craziest business you've ever done?
So, well, I've got this manufacturing company that I'm in business partnership with this guy who has a manufacturing business as well, and he presented this idea and said, there's an opportunity to open a powder coating business. The powder coating industry, like many of the manufacturing industries, are sort of run by baby boomers, or kind of, and they're all kind of aging out, and the systems are reasonably old-fashioned. We have a chance to modernise things, so we did that just over a year ago, and it was kind of crazy because we've done it obviously in the worst recession apparently of the last 30-40 years, so
allegedly.
And then we then brought in a flashings part of it, and we basically powder coat metal and all sorts of things to protect it from the weather. And so it's a really interesting business. It's out in Penrose. I go out there maybe once a month to have a look, and I help with the sort of strategy and goal setting and people side of things. It's really interesting because I'm not really, if you think about me, I come from a services background, professional services.
Yeah.
People can't really imagine that I would go to a manufacturing site, put on, my high-vis vest and walk around the floor, shop floor. But I actually get a lot of, what I like about that business is you can see something tangible.
Yes.
Because I'd actually invested a lot in tech businesses, and often the startup businesses were looking for a problem to solve or product market fit, right? And with the manufacturing business, we know who the customer is. We know what we do. We can go get the customer, we can do it, and we can charge for it straight away. And even though it was a new business, we've just done over probably this year as our first year, even in a recession, we have made money and we've done revenue of over $2 million.
That's amazing.
So now to try and get a startup tech business to do that, from the ground, a standing start, it's really difficult. So I was like, I just need something that's a bit real.
Yes, I love it. You're like, interesting.
So I like it.
It's so funny. It's often like people, I've been at some people's houses or at events, wildly successful people. And, then you ask what is it? How did you, what was it? And it's often the most practical, not sexy things. Hidden
things everybody needs but nobody really thinks about.
Yes.
Like waste management. Like, bins and people going around collecting bins.
Yeah, that guy was doing the lids for ketchup.
Yeah.
And ruling it. It was really amazing to see.
Somebody's got to make that stuff, right? So I think it's just really interesting to be something real and tangible like that.
Yeah, I love that. So circling back, you left the business. You had that moment of, I want to be in control of my own fate. And then Madison Recruitment.
Yes.
Tell me about that, because that was quite the success story, at least from the outside looking in.
Yeah, no, it really was. I mean, so I started it with Winnis, who was my business partner. We worked together at this other company, you see. And so I said, look, I'm going to get out. I can't keep doing this. And so she thought about it. She was a bit older than me. I'd hired her into the company as a consultant. Then she was obviously very talented, very smart. So she became a branch manager. And then, very quickly we were kind of peers. And she was just really smart. But I had a business before, so had been in business herself, was meant to be kind of retired, but wasn't really ready for that. And so we went off and started this. So 2 women in this little office with this part-time receptionist. It was hilarious. And we thought, we looked out and saw our male counterparts living this different kind of life in the recruitment industry, right? They were often in executive recruitment, and they seemed to just have lots of long lunches. They seemed to play golf on a Friday. They didn't seem to be working, not really sweating it. And we were like, oh, maybe we should do that, So we
that
thought,
looks like fun.
That looks like more us, So we'll go off and start this kind of executive boutique recruitment agency. But, it really wasn't us. Firstly, neither of us liked golf. Secondly, both of us we've got very high work ethic, right? And we like the pace. Yeah. And executive recruitment's very slow and the decision making takes ages. And so we were like, no. And so we can't
not us.
Deal with this, And so we just ended up doing work in the business support space. And then our key moment that we'd done a lot of work in the call centre recruitment space, but back in the 90s and early 2000s was call centres and service centres were big things, right?
I know, I used to work in one as a student. It was great.
Yeah, they were massive things, and people had 100 and 150 people answering calls and this kind of thing. So we became really, really good at that. And the funny thing was because I had worked for this big global corporate and I had been in this big national sales role, I just knew how to sell at these big for big tenders and contracts. So I just kept doing it because I didn't know that you weren't meant to, because you were now just a 2-person business, not a 50, 80-person business. So I just kept pitching for these things and we kept winning them, so we kept hiring staff. And so that's how it went,
And that's how I accidentally started a multi-million-dollar company.
And so we kept moving premises. It was so crazy. We were like in this little office, and then we ran out of room there, and then we had to break a wall through to go into the next building, and then we had, because the landlords owned the two buildings side by side, so they just kept giving us more and more space, and this was within a year. I mean, within 18 months, we had an office in Hamilton. Because I won this big tender for 150 data entry staff for the Inland Revenue down there. So we better open an office there. So we did. It was just crazy. So year on year, we just grew and grew and grew and grew. It was just crazy stuff.
And how did you deal with that? Because I've experienced in my agency like times of ridiculously rapid growth.
Yep.
And how do you maintain a sense of sanity, to what degree it was there to begin with, but also like company culture? Because like you said, it was you and your business partner, and you were very much aligned and both had the same work ethic.
Yes.
But all of a sudden there's all these people and you're pitching these big contracts, so you need to deliver in 18 months. How did you navigate this?
I think back in the early 2000s and things, people didn't really, there was a sort of starting talk of company culture, and there was a lot of things around values and that sort of thing. But I think we lived it. And so we didn't do anything that we didn't expect other people. I mean, we did everything that we expected other people to do. So we had crazy things like the tea towel roster. Now, this sounds mad, right?
The tea towel roster.
Yeah, the tea towel roster. So at the end of each week, somebody in the team had to take the tea towels home to wash them, because we were a small business and we didn't have lots of money. So we did have a cleaner, but we had our own tea towels, right? So somebody needed to take the tea towels home. So we were all on the roster, including Winnis and I, and we would take the tea towels home and wash them and bring them back folded.
I love that
and
so much.
We did that because, and it set, basically what it was saying, it wasn't about the tea towels, it was really, I mean it was as well, but it was basically saying we're all in this together, and
Beautiful.
we're a team. And so we would work, I mean, you talk about sanity and that sort of stuff. I remember we would be at work at like 7 a.m, we would work till 7 p.m. If I was writing a tender, I'd often be there till 10, 11 p.m. writing an RFP. And so it was just one of those things where we just did what we had to do.
Yeah.
And we were I was in my 30s, so it was I had the energy to do it. And so did Winnis. And we had all of the people that we employed, they'd come from similar kind of backgrounds. Recruitment's quite a high adrenaline, fast pace.
Yeah.
You either love it or you don't. And you can either do it or you can't. And so the women were just amazing. They were mainly women, All of them had this really big commitment to making sure we delivered on what we said we were going to do, because basically we based our whole principle of how we were as the opposite of everything we'd come from.
Yes, exactly.
Right? And so we went, we're going to treat people really well. We're going to make sure all the people that are candidates are really looked after. We're going to make sure that we tell our clients, exactly what's happening with their vacancies. So we had these 3 rules when we first started, and probably if I think about them now, they weren't really rules. They're more like, this is the thing about the way we're going to be. We're going to treat all our candidates with dignity and respect, and how we would want to be treated. We're going to update our clients every day about where their assignment was at, like where we were at with their vacancies. And thirdly, we're going to treat each other the way I would like to be treated. I'd treat you that way. And so just those 3 really basic things set up the culture.
That's incredible. I mean, it sounds so ridiculously simple, but it's so easy, especially when you're younger and you're growing so fast that you're almost like, don't know what to do with it. Yeah. Where we also sometimes, make that mean things about us. We're like, I must be really, you can easily kind of lose that track a little bit in that. So that's beautiful.
And it was so simple to remember. Yeah. I think those things have to be simple to remember, because anytime a mistake happens, we can go, okay, where do we fall down in these 3 things? One of these 3 things. What happened here?
Yeah, not like a manifesto of days and days. Yeah. It's like, no, are we decent humans? Yeah.
And a client complains. Why did they complain? Oh, because we missed a day where we didn't tell them what was going on. Is that what happened? Because remember our rule, we always tell them what's going on, even if we've got nothing to tell them, And so we could always link it back to stuff, So it was kind of that really set us that really strong foundation. Yeah.
That's beautiful, and it's such a powerful foundation for a business, and clearly it showed in the success story. How was it when you down the line sold this business for 8 figures and had to let go of this baby that is it's not a baby anymore. It was a big baby, but it's really, it's such a extension of your values and who you are as a person.
Yeah.
How was that letting go?
Well, what's so interesting about that was I don't think you realize how much your business is part of your identity until it's not. And I didn't know actually that it was such a big part of my personal brand. Now people now talk about personal brand. We didn't know what that was back then, right? But we're like, Marisa is co-owner of Madison, so that was who I was. So it was kind of an interesting thing. I have to say, we were so caught up in the actual process of the deal and the exit and all of those things. And so all the legal documents and everything. And when we finally signed the final deal and everything, I was cruising in the Mediterranean with my family. So in the 2013 or 12, whenever it was, and we'd pretty much dial up, on the ship. Cruise ship was really terrible. So anyway, but it finally got done, and I had brought my parents on the cruise, and I tell this story about how I didn't realise that moment was such a big moment until I actually said it out loud to my parents. And they said, because they were worried about me being away for so long, and they said, and they actually said to me, we're quite worried. And I said, about what? And they said, you're away. Winnis doesn't really go into the business very much now. You've got this new guy that's only been running the company for just over a year or whatever. How do you know the company's okay? And I went, don't worry, Mum and Dad, we've just sold the business for just over.
Not my problem.
Yeah, 40. And when I said the number, and when I said it, that's when I realised this was a life-changing event.
Yeah.
And that's when I realised, actually, we've just sold the business, And I thought, and it was good we had 1 year earn-out. We had a 1 year earn-out because we were still on the advisory board, so we could go in once a month, still feel connected. So I had almost like a year to detach.
Yeah, that's so important.
Yeah, from the company, just to realise, actually, this company's not really mine anymore. It was such a weird journey, though, because you still had this real passion for it. You still had this real thing about, are they doing things the right way, all of that stuff. But actually, in the end, you just had to let it go. And I do remember feeling quite lost. I do remember feeling like, it's quite common, I understand, that, you're seeking for relevancy,
I mean, every word you're saying is speaking straight to my soul. When I sold Typhoon, my agency, I felt like I dropped my kid with a 12-year-old babysitter, and that's nothing to say about whoever bought it, but with the babysitter, and now had to watch them raise my baby differently. And like you said, like feeling quite like, what's my place here? Especially like when I went back to Amsterdam, where the head office was, just really searching, and the how much of my identity was tied up in the business, not just in people's perception, but in my own. It's like, if I am not the owner of this, and at the same time, for me, my marriage fell apart. So like all these key identities fell over, and I'm like, well, if I'm not this and not this, then what's there? Yeah, who am I? What's left?
Yeah. And so I rushed into things like angel investing, because of course, here's the other thing. As soon as people know that you've got money from a payout, then you get all these approaches, right? And it's quite flattering, because you get flattered by these things because you don't know that actually you're just got a target on your back and you're one of many, and they're just, wanting somebody to put money into things. So I did some investments in some things and that I shouldn't have. And I remember talking to this one guy that I saw in I think it was a Louis Vuitton shop or something, and he was buying something for his assistant, and he was a very well-known entrepreneur and had exited big businesses. And so I was out talking to him about it and told him we just had an exit. Well, he said, my one big piece of advice is do nothing for a year. Just sit on your hands and do nothing. Well, I didn't listen to him. I should have. Because I put all this money into crazy things, and some of it paid off, a lot of it didn't.
Yeah.
And
well,
so,
I mean, it pays off in some way, shape, or form.
yeah,
Now we know.
Yeah, now we know lessons learned, but expensive lessons. And so I think that was good advice. If anyone ever goes through a exit or anything, just sit on your hands, just take a beat, just reflect on what's important, maybe, you know, have some fun things to do, but don't rush into anything.
Yeah. It's such powerful advice and so hard to do.
Yes.
Especially when you're dealing with this ego death and this whole identity. I'm like, okay, my worth or my sense of self was tied into this business, so now that I don't have that emptiness, which isn't empty at all, but feels like that because you're used to filling your time and your days.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing, right? You're going from 100 kilometres an hour to a hard stop, and you know, suddenly whoop, and then ooh, and so actually, you know, yeah, it was very well. I fell into trying to fill the time of this gap, the space it left.
Yeah.
You know, even though I wasn't going into the business every day or anything, but it occupied my mind. There were decisions to be made. There were, you know, you were still thinking strategy and all this sort of stuff, and suddenly didn't have to worry about that anymore.
And I can imagine, I don't know if that was true for you as well, but there's times where that also is quite lonely because you're supposed to be really happy and grateful because you just had this huge exit.
Yes.
So you can't really complain and be like, actually, I don't really know who I am in this new version of me.
Yes.
And, you know, that can be quite overwhelming.
I think I mean, you know, I still had lots of my friends and everything that, you know, kept me pretty grounded and all that kind of thing. It wasn't really that side of it. I think more it was about me not knowing, because I'd been so busy building the business with my business partner, we'd been so busy in the doing that I had never really sat down to think about maybe taking a helicopter view of my life and what was important. And you know, you do that wheel of life thing, and you fill in the wheel of life, and I never did that. And if I'd done that and worked out that actually business is just a little slice and I've got all these other things I could have focused on instead, maybe I would have had more of a view as to, oh look, I could go and learn to speak blah 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 for some French properly, or I could go to live in France and immerse myself in a little village and actually really because it was one of my things I wanted to do, or learn a new hobby, or spend more time with my daughter. You know, what are the things that I could have done instead of rushing back to fill that little slice that I thought was the whole pie.
You think that's
I thought was the whole pie.
And how the tables have turned.
Yeah, exactly, right?
I mean, now this is what you preach.
Yeah.
But before we go there, you said, you know, you had this void, this space, and you went straight into angel investing. And this is a world that's always fascinated me because I briefly looked it up before our interview today, and still, it's 2025, people. The stats of venture capital that goes to female founders globally is shocking.
Tiny.
Shocking.
Yeah. And yet the research will show that female founded businesses are more likely to return 30-something% more to you than male founded businesses. That's in the research. It's global. It's so Teresa Gatting and somebody at Auckland University, I think it was, or AUT, produced this report that actually showed that if you invest in female founders, they're far more likely to get a better return.
It is
crazy.
Well, it's crazy because, I mean, I know this to be true. You know this to be true. You know, the end goal, my big vision with anything I do, be it the podcast or any other parts of my business, is because I truly believe the world deserves female-led businesses that are led by women that know who they are, know their worth, own their worth, charge their worth, and just unleash their unique, weird unicornness onto the world, instead of trying to be a carbon copy either of each other or of a man. Because, you know, like how you said when you started Madison, you were like, well, this is what they do, so I guess this is what it means. And then you were like, oh, actually, no.
It was so boring. But yeah, I think what's really interesting about that is when I see women pitching, and they're pitching to other women, or it doesn't matter who the audience is, because it's a risk assessment, right? If you're looking to put money into something, it's a risk assessment.
Yeah.
And of course, if the woman that's pitching doesn't fit all the models and everything, then it looks higher risk, you know, or it looks like, I don't really know if I think she can deliver, you know. So they go for a certain formula. And so when I talk to women who are looking to pitch or raise capital, I'm trying to get them to make sure that they answer all the questions that are going to come at them. Yeah. I want them to understand that they've got to play the game to a degree, not in changing who they are or anything, but knowing the information and the data and what problem they're trying to solve and what they think they're trying to solve. Yeah. But being able to really articulate that well, and knowing their numbers well, and knowing, you know, what the plan is, you know, even if the plan has to change, but being really clear. Yeah, about
the masculine quote unquote. Yeah, that's not like male, just like the masculine energy. It's like the practical, because I think that's a fine line. It's interesting that you bring this up, because one of my clients, were talking about how do you walk the line between pitching to like angel investors and venture capital and like you say, playing the part, yet maintaining
who you are,
you are, because once you set off and you take that exit, once you present it a certain way and you are now dependent on their funding, your wiggle room to kind of course correct, like you were able to, you know, and is a lot less. So how do you advise?
I think it's really, you've got to find the people that get it. So in some ways you've got to do really deep research about the people that you actually want on the ride, right, and who have the capacity to help fund you or find the right people for you to fund you. Because, you know, going to a tech person about something, creating a tech business and then going to somebody that's never invested in tech, who doesn't really understand, doesn't care, you're never going to convince them, right? No. But if you find people who really understand that piece of tech that you're in, or in the industry that you're trying to solve it for, and, you know, so if I was in, you know, I'll talk about this person I met on the weekend, this woman, and she's got this fintech that she thinks would be really great for retail. I would look to go and say, okay, if she needed to raise funds, but she doesn't, but if she did, I would say, okay, who are the really smart retailers who've done really well in the space and who've exited and have some money and actually will understand the problem you're solving?
Yeah, because they've lived it.
They've lived it. I would go there, right? That's who I would. And then they get it. They come for the ride and they introduce me to other people like them, right? Yes. And so then I can just be who I am. I can understand the problem and they can get it, and I can just be me, because I don't have to pretend that I'm trying to sell this retail tech to somebody who never gets tech and doesn't. But now I'm trying to do two things: convince them about about investing in tech, but secondly about, you know, so find the people that get it, find your tribe, find the people that understand you.
I love that. That is such good advice. And I think, like, if you were to look, or if you were to give like one piece of advice to women, because I mean, what I admire incredibly in you is you've worn all the hats, sat on all the chairs at the table, and actually still kind of do, from board members to entrepreneur to solopreneur to investor to mentor to coach. Like you really have gone from not having a bird's eye view to having like a satellite view of like 360.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it, actually.
So what is like one thing that you see female founders, not necessarily who are starting, but who are looking to really to step it up? I think everyone kind of has this moment where they start kind of for funsies, and then they realize if they do well, first of all, that the thing they started to do is often not what you end up doing if your business grows. But there's this pivotal moment, I think, within every business where you're like, oh fuck, this is a real business. I remember like sitting there thinking, you know, like I was playing business. I was playing office. And then I had one moment, I think it was when I had my first $1 million in revenue, and I was like, it's like, Oh, wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Wait, this is real.
Yeah. I think it's just for when I talk to women, and so I had this business called Reamped where I help women business founders to, really understand and get control of their business, right? And often it's because they're either going to, the problem I think about business, the thing about business, the principle of business is if it's not growing or if you're standing still, you're actually going backwards. So if you want to have a hobby business, that's a really different thing where you're just creating a job for yourself and it's kind of, that's fine. You're not trying to create any value or asset to sell. It's just something that you enjoy doing till the end of your days or until the customer doesn't want it anymore or whatever, right? So that's one end of the scale. But if you're actually serious about having a business, then if you're not growing, then you're going backwards. And so then when I see women who come to my workshops or when I mentor or coach women and they talk about this growth thing and they're hesitant because they think, if I grow though, there's this I don't know if it's a confidence issue or a self-belief issue about whether I've got the skills to grow this thing in a way that makes sense for them, like in terms of how many hours am I going to work?
Well, that's it, the price of success,
right? What is the commitment to it? What is the funding strategy for it, right? Because you can't grow with no funding strategy, right? Because the cash just is ripped out of the business into growth.
I mean, you can. I've done it. It's not a good idea.
It's not fun. It's not fun, right?
Do not try that at home.
Yeah. It can be tough, right? So I think just really understanding where you want to go with it and understanding what it really is for you and being honest with yourself. Like if it really is just I never and you can't force people into doing something just because your business is successful and say, well, you really should grow it. It's got to be your version of success, as we talked about earlier, right? So somebody's version of success is that I can finish it Thursday on a 5 o'clock. I have Friday, Saturday, Sunday off with my family, and I have 10 really good customer clients that I just work with, and that's it.
Fabulous.
Fabulous. If you can keep doing that for as long as you want to keep doing that, great. But somebody else's version of success is you've got a tiger by the tail, you really want to do something amazing with it, then commit and believe, because you could grow something from sort of, by the time we sold the business, I think we were doing over 50 million revenue and whatever. So you can get something bigger than what you imagine. And I say to women, it's actually easier to be at the big end of town because you've got whole lots of resources within the business that you aren't hands-on doing the thing anymore. But you have to go through what I call the valley of death, which is
been there,
right,
done that,
which is the growth journey, right?
Yeah.
But if you can get through the growth journey, and the crises of going through the growth journey isn't that much harder to experience than if you're a small business and you lose a client. I mean, that's just as stressful as trying to clip on more people, trying to think of how to fund things. That's quite stressful. But if you can do that and you've got the mental toughness to do it, man, the payoff is huge.
I think it's
mental toughness.
That's it. I was speaking in another episode with Trish Peng. I was telling you about it, and we were talking about you need to have this almost delusional conviction in it. And I think the biggest differentiator in that is, what is the come from though? Like, do you want to grow just for the sake of growing? Are you doing it like I, for example, was in my first business from a place of trying to prove myself? I don't know to whom, some invisible force. So it actually didn't come from the most integrated place. Versus I have this vision, and this is important. This deserves to be everything it can be. Just like a baby. And from that space, it's almost like you're the custodian of this business. And it demands you to bring it to where it can get.
Good. And if you have that vision or idea of where you want to see it, even if you just did. I don't know if I believe in 10-year visions because it seems so far away, but it's not, goes really fast actually. But even if you just did a 5x5, in the next 5 years, if I'm sitting here in 2030, where would I want to be sitting how would I like my business to look? And how will I get there then? You know, and so even just kind of having a bit of a picture and then kind of reverse engineering it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah, it's a sense of direction.
Yeah.
It comes back to the bus stop and the buses of opportunity.
Yeah.
If you don't know which direction you want to go in, how do you know which buses to take?
Exactly.
You know, one might go
Exactly.
the opposite direction.
Exactly.
But wrapping it up, because time really does fly. And we've already noticed we could do this all day long.
Yeah.
I always like to end the podcast with a bit of a flipping of the script. And if there's anything that, any questions you have for me.
Well, it's really interesting. I was just reading a how-to for setting up a podcast and all the things that you have to think about before you set up a podcast. And I was like, wow, that's a lot. There was a lot. This article was amazing, actually. I was like, oh, I wonder if Yala's seen this. But anyway, it was quite incredible. So then I thought, okay, if you're going to do this, it takes quite a lot of commitment, right? And so then my question was going to be, out of it, what for you is success for this podcast? What does that look like for you?
I love that so much. Truthfully, this podcast at this point, like a week pre-launch, guys,
Yes.
I'm launching on my birthday next week.
Yeah.
But that's going to be a while ago when you're all listening to this. But right now, it's a week before the official launch.
Yeah.
At this point, if you were to look at it through, if I were to hand all the data to you and be like, look, this is my business and this is what I'm investing in this in terms of time, energy, money.
Yeah.
I think you might want to shake me a little bit. I'm like, are you sure you're okay? Is this a midlife crisis? But for me, success with this, I think this is kind of comes back to what I was talking about before, about sometimes you have a vision that you really believe in, that you really believe is important. And it's my job to kind of usher it home, to get it there safe, to be the custodian. So for me, success is even if only one person listens to an episode and feels seen, like heard, like they're not crazy, it's not them, they're not the only ones struggling, because everyone's presenting this like perfect picture of, like they see the end result, right? They see you now investing after selling, Madison for 8 figures. And it creates this gap, this chasm of like, what's wrong with me? And it causes a lot of people to give up, especially female founders, because the world they're trying to navigate is templated to the masculine. At least it still is to a large degree.
Yes.
So if just one person listens to any episode and feels heard and seen and like emboldened to keep going because their dream is worth it, that's success. Now, obviously, I hope more than one person is listening to this.
Yes.
But like I think that is the key. And on a personal level, like on the micro.
Yeah.
I've had my own roller coaster with the businesses and selling and going from a big multinational, multi-million-dollar business to a one-man show, because I'm like, I never want to have staff again. I never want to have to deal with that stress again, and then growing it again. And the one thing I have learned is that my number one business strategy is joy. Is if I genuinely love what I do, it doesn't need to like strategically make sense. I mean, it will, but it always converts. And I can have the best, most thought out strategy, but if it doesn't spark something inside of me, it won't convert, or it won't convert to what it can be. So
I love that answer. I love the strategy of joy.
Yeah.
Oh,
this is my number one business strategy.
We all need joy in our lives. Oh my God. Even like, after the last few years have just been so hard for so many people.
Yeah.
And, some of us are fortunate that, the economy doesn't really touch us that much. But, even with this new business we launched. But, it's just joy. Yeah. Is such a beautiful thing we need more people to want to experience joy and have it in their lives. Because so many people, if you ask them, would say, oh, I don't know where where
don't
do I
know
get
where
joy,
to find it, or don't dare to prioritize it.
Yeah.
But I think from that space, like I had to have like a heart-to-heart with myself in my own dark night of the soul, and be like, what is the one thing that if no one ever paid me, that I would, like, I'd still want to do? It's like, I want to be around like inspiring female founders that literally I have the biggest girl crushes on, and have real conversations. And I'm like, from there, the rest will follow.
Yes.
And it has, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh, it's so good. I love that. Yeah. Oh, well, that's a great definition of success.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Marisa. For everyone watching, listening, all Marissa's details will be linked in the show notes, so you can give her a good stalk, you can find her, you can see what she's up to. I'm already looking at some of the initiatives you were talking about. I'm like, oh my God, it's so cool. I want to play. So please be sure to give her a follow, have a look, and thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I loved it.
It's so much fun.
So much fun.